welcome to the Dr. Tim Jennings Show, where we seek real answers to life's real problems. I'm Dr. Tim Jennings, here with Susan Collenberg and Lori Atkins.
Hi, welcome. Today we're going to be discussing the aging brain and ways we can prevent dementia, which is super topical. Everybody's going to be interested in hearing that today. But before we get into the discussion, we want to read a question from one of our listeners. Lorraine is asking, Dr. Jennings, can you please explain God's wrath? I have recently heard this applied to God pouring out his wrath on Jesus so that we can live.
So somebody may be looking in on the aging brain. Why is a psychiatrist getting asked questions about God's wrath and what's happening to Jesus? Yeah. Well, I've written a couple books, The God-Shaped Brain and The God-Shaped Heart. And in those books, I've gone through and documented how your view of God actually has an impact on your physical health, your brain health, your emotional health. And the view of God you hold has a big impact. Angry, wrathful, punishing God constructs are unhealthy. They activate stress circuits, undermine physical health and mental health. Benevolent, compassionate, loving God concepts are healing to people. And this is what neurobiology actually shows. So the question is very pertinent then, if this is healing and loving, well then what do we do with this issue of God's wrath? Right. Well, people have tried to answer those questions through looking through a human legal justice system, i.e. God's law is a system of rules that he is required to inflict punishments for, and thus wrath is him getting angry for rule breaking and having to punish, and it gets this very ugly and fearful God constructs, which are actually unhealthy to us to believe. Right. There's another way, if you see God as creator, builder of reality, laws upon which reality work, laws of physics and so forth and so on, then breaches in those laws are harmful to those who are breaking them. Jumping off the Empire State Building is harmful to people who jump off that. People who smoke cigarettes, it's harmful to them to do this, okay? When you understand it in that light, then what do we understand God's wrath to be, other than ultimately, after loving attempts to intervene, to turn people back to healthy directions, to get people to stop doing things that are destructive to themselves, lovingly letting people go to reap what they've chosen to do. Now, is there biblical evidence for that view? Romans chapter 1, verse 18 says, the wrath of God is being revealed against all wickedness and godlessness of men who suppress the truth by their wickedness. And Paul goes on to tell in verse 24, 26, and 28 what God actually does, and this is what God does. Therefore, God let them go. Therefore, God gave them up. Therefore, God surrendered them, depending on which version you're looking at. And so on the cross, what did God do to Jesus on the cross? Jesus tells you, my God, why have you forsaken me? Let me go, given me up. And what did he give Jesus up to? Was this an anger on God's part? Was this hostile on God's part? No. In all these circumstances, God is surrendering people to experience what they have chosen. And Jesus chose to go through the cross for the purpose of our salvation, and God surrendered him to it. Did not, even though he loved his son, he gave his son and surrendered him for this purpose, and he did not intervene to stop it. And this, of course, ultimately understanding design law is God's wrath, and we can have great love for a being who ultimately gives us freedom, even if it's freedom to destroy ourselves.
Awesome.
Yes, very powerful. Very powerful.
So you have a new book out. It's called The Aging Brain, Proven Steps to Prevent Dementia and Sharpen Your Mind. Tell us what exactly is dementia.
Yeah, so dementia is the term for the symptom constellation that occurs when the brain has lost certain amount of its ability. The brain tissue has been damaged in such a way that we have lost a constellation of abilities. And those abilities would be memory impairment, along with some other cognitive loss. So memory impairment with, say, inability to organize and plan and keep your checkbook and that type of executive function loss. Memory impairment with language loss, so you can't use language in the same way. Memory impairment with loss of simple motor abilities, like you can't tie your shoes and you can't button your clothes like you used to, and or loss of being able to identify and name things. You can't recognize the names of things anymore. And so it's a memory impairment with some other cognitive dysfunction. One plus memory, that's dementia.
Okay. And is there a most common type? What's the most common type?
The most common type of dementia is the Alzheimer's dementia. And Alzheimer's dementia is caused by Alzheimer's disease. Okay. Now, Alzheimer's disease is the pathological process happening to the brain tissue, which is killing the brain tissue. And then when enough neurons have been damaged, then you get the symptom cluster of memory impairment and cognitive losses. That is Alzheimer's dementia. But you can have dementia from other reasons. So Parkinson's disease can cause dementia, and that's Parkinson's dementia.
Right.
You can have traumatic brain injury, and that can cause traumatic brain injury can cause dementia. You can have vascular injury, which is little strokes in the brain, multiple little strokes in the brain, and that's damaging brain tissue, and that's vascular dementia. And there's a lot of causes of dementia. One cause is Alzheimer's disease, which causes Alzheimer's dementia, and the prevalence rates in America, 67 adults out of every 1,000 persons will have dementia of an Alzheimer's type, whereas 9.5 out of 1,000 will have the Parkinson's type.
Okay.
So you can see quite a significant difference in the frequency of the two types.
So what are the risks? Are there certain risks that could cause you to get dementia?
Yeah, so there's, again, risks for different types of dementia. Now, some risks overlap and increase both types of dementia.
Okay.
Or several types of dementia. So risks like smoking. Smoking is highly inflammatory. Anything that chronically increases inflammation in the body will increase the risk of Alzheimer's dementia. But smoking also increases vascular disease risk, so it will increase the risk of vascular dementia as well. Sedentary lifestyle. Sedentary lifestyle, not exercising, increases the risk of Alzheimer's dementia, but it also increases the risk of vascular disease, so increases the risk of vascular dementia. Okay? Unhealthy diet with poor nutrition, lots of junk foods and fatty foods and sugary sweet foods and things like this throughout your lifetime increases the risk of both vascular and Alzheimer's dementia. Obesity increases the risk of both types of dementia as well. Okay, so there's a whole lot of risk factors available. Having diabetes type 2 increases your risk of Alzheimer's dementia 60%.
Wow.
Okay, so a lot of different risk factors.
And what about, I don't know if did you mention alcohol? Does that play a part in dementia?
So heavy alcohol consumption.
Okay.
Heavy alcohol consumption. There's a lot of mixed data about alcohol. And so let's talk about the alcohol, because there's a lot of information. We drink a little bit of wine here, a little bit of wine there. Maybe it's going to help your heart, help your brain, and so forth, so on. Okay, there are certain situations that we can be black and white on, 100% certain on, that alcohol is always harmful. Alcohol is always harmful to unborn fetuses. Doesn't matter the amount. It's always harmful. Alcohol is harmful to adolescents and children in the developing brain. Okay, alcohol is harmful with people with known brain diseases. People who already have cognitive impairments and dementia, alcohol worsens their cognitive performance and so forth. Okay? Heavy alcohol use. Doesn't matter what your baseline health is, and that's alcohol to the point of intoxication, drunkenness. Drunkenness is harmful. Okay? It doesn't matter the form.
Right.
Now, where it gets blurry is when there's studies out there that show 1 to 2 glasses of wine, even on a daily basis, 1 to 2 glasses, 1 for women, 2 for men, glasses of wine have been shown to have various health benefits associated with it. Well, the reason that probably is the case is because the wines have a lot of tannins in it, and these are chemicals that come out of that make the color of the wine, and they're anti-inflammatory and scavenge up free radicals. And so the wine is getting the benefit not from the ethanol or the alcohol in the wine, but from these other microchemicals that are in the grapes. And so the data shows you get the same benefits from grape juice without alcohol. And if you drink enough of the wine that the alcohol level goes to the point of intoxication, you don't have benefit anymore, because the alcohol is actually is toxic or damaging, and it will override any benefit of the small amount of 1 or 2 glasses and the benefits you might be getting from the tannins and the phytochemicals.
Okay, so you mentioned junk food, sugary foods. Are there other specific foods? Are there specific foods that you can eat that actually reduce your risk of dementia?
Yes, there's a lot of foods. So one of the easiest ones would be eating some oily fish. Oily fish on a regular basis. I think the data shows if you have an oily serving of fish once a week, you reduce your risk of dementia 40%.
Wow.
Alzheimer's dementia 40%.
So oily fish, what kind of fish is that? Give us an example.
Sardines, mackerel, wild salmons. These are wild fish. Predominantly you want wild. Most of the farm-raised fish are fed corn, and they don't have omega-3s. They have omega-6s that way. So the wild salmons, mackerels, sardines, oily fish.
Now, is
high,
that
high in omega-3 fatty acids with the subtype omega-3s DHA, EPA. Those are the long-chain omega-3s. Short-chain omega-3s, ALA, come from things like flaxseed and other
Right.
plant sources. And the body converts very little bit of that. Less than 1% of the ALA is converted to the long-chain DHA, which is your brain needs, and about 8% is converted to EPA. And the data shows that people who have the fish have significantly reduced rates of dementia as they age compared to those who don't.
now are taking fish oil supplements as good as eating the fish, or is there a benefit to?
So there is benefit to taking the fish oil supplements, but the data shows it's not as robust. You get a more robust effect from actually eating the fish than you do taking the supplements.
Okay, so what is there a danger of mercury from the fish?
So the data looked at the long term of people who ate the fish, and they looked at mercury levels, and they actually had higher mercury levels than the people that didn't eat the fish, but they had no worsening cognition. In fact, their cognitions were better. So while they had a slight increase in mercury, the mercury increase from eating the fish was not high enough to cause any cognitive or health problems.
Okay.
Are there other lifestyle things that we can do to decrease our risk of dementia, say like exercise, physical exercise?
So physical exercise is probably the number one thing people can do. Physical exercise turns on all neurotrophins. Neurotrophins are proteins that cause your brain to make new neurons, your neurons to sprout and make new connections. Physical exercise turns on a factor out of your muscles called interleukin 10. It's a very powerful anti-inflammatory factor which reduces inflammation throughout your body. Physical exercise increases circulation, so you get better blood flow. You clean the toxins out of your brain more easily. You get better sleep with physical exercise. It turns on the mood elevators, the endorphins, the enkephalins, and dopamine. So physical exercise has been shown in all the studies to significantly reduce the risk of dementia, all dementias, including Alzheimer's dementia, including in people. And by the way, both the fish, eating the fish, and the exercise reduces dementia in people who have the ApoE4 gene, and this is a gene that's associated with increased risk of Alzheimer's dementia. So if you get this bad gene, it increases your risk of Alzheimer's dementia 60%. But if you exercised regularly, you didn't progress to dementia, even if you had the bad gene.
Wow.
Okay, so genes alone are not sufficient to cause Alzheimer's dementia. It's going to be genes and environment interacting together.
What kind of exercise is the best exercise if you're trying to have a healthier body and to stay away from dementia?
The one you like.
Okay.
The one you'll do?
No. It's not just what you. No, it's not the one you'll do. That's not true. That's not what I said.
Okay.
I said the one you like.
So it makes a difference. You have to like what you're doing.
Yes.
Okay.
The data shows that if you're doing the exercise,
Right,
It's not
begrudgingly.
but your mindset is, I hate this, it's miserable, I can't wait
Yes.
to get off of it, you're actually activating stress circuits in your brain, which activates immune system, which kicks up inflammatory factors, and you undermine the health benefits of the exercise. And some people don't get improved cholesterol,
Right.
don't get improved glucose control, because they're actually becoming more stressed from the exercise because they're doing exercise they hate and can't stand. So an exercise that's the best exercise is the one you like, the one you enjoy, and then the one that's sustainable and you can continue to do over the course of time. Outdoor exercise has been shown to be more beneficial than indoor exercise.
Okay.
Now, one study that I've seen shown that you could get the same outdoor benefits if you were looking at murals of outdoor scenes while you're doing the indoor exercise. But if you're not looking at murals of outdoor scenes, and when you're doing indoor exercise, you don't get as robust of effect as you do being outdoors. So outdoor exercise is better.
So how about having a treadmill out a window?
Yeah, that would be helpful. Having an indoor exercise, looking outside and looking at the outdoor scenes.
Is there like a time limit? Should you do you have to do so much time or?
So yes, so not all exercise. So you can exercise too much.
Right.
And generally, anybody that goes beyond half marathons is injuring themselves. So the Ironman and the marathon runners don't actually get longer life. They don't have better health. They have so much, because that level of exercise is actually damaging to the body, and it's beyond the repair mechanism, so to speak, and it wears and tears on the body so much it causes more damage than it does good. People who exercise regularly, as little as walking 20 minutes a day, okay, as little as walking, and now we're not talking a slow walk,
drag.
okay, drag. We're talking a brisk walk,
Okay.
a brisk walk that you're pushing yourself to walk, 20 minutes a day. Elderly folks who did that saw 2% growth in the part of the brain where new learning takes place, and that 2% growth reversed 2 years of aging. So their brain got it was 2 years younger just from walking. People who had mild cognitive impairments, which is the stuff you get before you actually get dementia, who engaged in a lifestyle program that included exercise, where they actually increased their walking slowly over a few weeks up to 40 minutes a day, stopped the progression. They did not progress on to dementia. They did the exercise with other lifestyle factors.
Right, with the fish and other things.
Fish, healthy diet, cutting out inflammatory foods and
That you triggered something, inflammatory foods. You keep mentioning that. So what is that? Is it a certain type of food or
So inflammation. Inflammation is your body has a system designed that is very, very minutely regulated that will kick up inflammation for the purpose of attacking invaders to your body and or repairing damage. So if you get the flu, and think of the symptoms you've had with the flu, not all the symptoms are from the flu virus. Much of those symptoms are from your body's own defense mechanisms cranking up the inflammatory cascade designed to attack the invader. And the inflammatory cascade would be your white immune cells with chemokines and other types of cytokines and other types of chemicals your body makes that would be designed to attack the invader. And so the symptoms of the inflammatory increase would be sometimes fever, not always, but sometimes fever, malaise, fatigue, aches and pains, sleepiness, loss of appetite, and these are the symptoms you get with an inflammatory cascade. Well, you can get that after a broken bone, an injury. Your inflammatory cascade gets up to put the repair mechanisms on, okay? So this type of inflammation, sickness, injury, it's a very focused, prescribed, and limited inflammation, and therefore it doesn't have long-term negative consequences. However, your body can turn on the inflammatory cascade not because of an actual threat, but because of a perceived threat. So you have negative mental constructs. You're a worrier. You feel you're under repression. You feel you're under chronic guilt. Then you're sending a signal to your body, potential threat, and you gear up your immune system, which gears up inflammation, anticipating some type of, but there isn't any, and that then chronically causes damage to your body. Insulin resistance increases the risk of obesity, and the insulin resistance in the brain is really probably the pathway that causes Alzheimer's dementia, because once the insulin resistance happens in the brain, it causes a cascade of events that ultimately result in the loss of neurons, and that becomes a reinforcing cycle. In the book, I actually go into the specific steps and details about that, how that happens.
So there are lots of diets out there. There's the paleo diet, low carb diet. Are there any specific types of diets that are especially helpful?
So two diets, actually, in the journal Neurology, they took biomarkers, blood, and they measured in the blood markers of different foods that people have eaten. And they identified 3 biomarker patterns of 3 different types of dietary habits. Two of those biomarkers of 2 diets proved to be not only cognitively better, people had better cognitive performance, but they had larger brain volume. And one pattern had worse cognitive performance and smaller brain volume. And the 2 patterns that were really good for the brain and better performance were either the whole food vegan diet, high in fruits, nuts, grains, vegetables, the B vitamin, C vitamin, and so forth like that. That was very helpful, very good outcomes. And the other was the Mediterranean diet, high in fish oils, omega-3 fatty acids, low in the dairy, and those things, okay, and high in olive oil, fish oil, and so forth. The one diet that was bad was the American diet, the meat, potato diet, fast food, junk food diet. This is the one that was really bad for the brain, and that's because that's an inflammatory. These first 2 diets are anti-inflammatory. This other diet's an inflammatory diet.
Makes sense.
Yes.
What about some other impacts to dementia risk? What about the types of relationships that you're in?
So once you get this big idea in your head that anything that drives chronic inflammation will increase your risk of dementia, then you can just ask that question. Now, what would chronic, ongoing relationship conflict do? Do you think it would cause a person to be calmer and more at peace, or stir them up and keep them more stressed and anxious? And the more stressed and anxious, that drives the inflammatory cascade. So you can predict that that's going to undermine physical well-being and ultimately increase your risk of dementia.
Okay. And so what about our relationship with God or our understanding of who God is?
Same thing. People who have a God concept or religions that cause them to live in fear, that cause them to live in this scrutinizing way where they're constantly worrying about this sin or this guilt or that guilt or this thing and that thing, and they're just always under this oppressive thing of that is unhealthy. But religions, now let's be clear, religions that are beneficent, that promote love, that promote compassion, that bring a sense of peace, they actually have health benefits. So it's not neutral. It's not neutral or bad. It's health benefit, no religion where you're actually a beneficent, happy person, that's better than believing in a God that causes fear and is authoritarian and dictator-like.
Wow.
Okay, that's very important. What about mental stimulation? What are some things that we can do to get our brain more active?
Yes, so my dad suffered from dementia, and he was convinced that doing crossword puzzles, he did a crossword puzzle every day. You know what I mean?
So he had the right concept,
Yes.
the wrong application.
Okay.
Crossword puzzle working every day is not new learning. It's new learning. That's just regurgitation, repetitive. That's habitual practice of patterns.
Okay.
That is not new learning. New learning would be he's learning a new language.
Okay.
He is learning how to dance, and he's never danced before. And dance would be a brilliant thing for people to dance.
physical.
And I'm not
It's
talking
exercise.
I'm not talking barroom dancing. I'm talking waltzing.
Yes.
Okay.
Tango, where you
Structured.
actually have a structured steps you need to learn. And this is why it's so brilliant, because you actually cognitively have to think, learn,
Yes.
plan, organize, direct your body, and you're doing physical exercise at the same time. So this is one of the best
perfect
things you can do would be
combo,
formal type dance steps and move, but not the just the standing up there and shaking yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not what we're talking about. Ping pong would be a good thing, because you have to do a lot of mental tracking,
yeah.
planning,
Right.
and then a lot of physical activity along with that as well. But taking art classes if you're not an artist,
Right.
taking music lessons if you're not a musician, something that is new for you, auditing a class at a college and actually learning some new material. Bible study if it's not the rote Bible study. The rote Bible study meaning, well, this is what I've always been taught and I'm just reinforcing everything I've ever
regurgitating
known for my
answers.
whole life. But studies that actually challenge you to contemplate new ideas, new perspectives, and new themes that you have to actually weigh out and consider. It'd be very helpful.
Okay, how about, are there some medications that will cure Alzheimer's?
Thus far, in the science and in medicine, there are no medicines that cure Alzheimer's. All the treatments available for Alzheimer's at this point in time are symptomatic treatments. They're designed simply to diminish some of the severity of the memory problems, and they only seem to they don't delay the progression of the disease.
Okay.
They simply delay the severity of the experience of the symptoms. So, for instance, if you're on a track of decline and you take some of the common medicines, what happens is it seems to push you back up the hill 6 to 12 months, but you're still going down the same hill.
Okay.
Because the neurons are still dying. It's just that now they've increased the availability of some of the neurotransmitters, so you seem less symptomatic for a while than you were before.
Okay. But
And
it's,
how do those medicines work? What's you said they're
The ones
the
that are most
neurons.
common increase the availability of a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine, and they do that from a couple different mechanisms, and that is the symptom relief that most of them are providing.
okay.
so are there other interventions that we can do if we...
So there's a whole bunch of lifestyle stuff that
Okay.
people can do, and really what you're going to find in the book is if you have a family history of late life Alzheimer's disease, even if you have the bad genes for late life Alzheimer's disease, there is a whole bunch of lifestyle changes you can make. And if you make the lifestyle changes, then you really won't progress to dementia, even if you have the genes for it. Because it's not simply having the ApoE gene that puts you at risk, it's the genes interacting with environment, and the common pathways are inflammation. So the lifestyle things in the book, we've already talked about some, exercise and so forth, are designed to reduce inflammation. But other things, a simple one we can tell people, eat a handful of walnuts a day. Handful of walnuts in the various studies remove one of the proteins out of the brain that are toxic to the brain that are associated with Alzheimer's dementia. And there's really no downside or danger to eating walnuts a day. And they're anti-inflammatory and they're good for brain health. So I would encourage people to eat the walnuts. 1 glass of 100% pomegranate juice a day. Several studies, we got those in the book, you can read about them, but in the studies, the pomegranate juice, high in polyphenols, anti-inflammatory, also remove from the brain this protein called amyloid protein that builds up in people who have Alzheimer's dementia. And in various studies, it shows to remove and reduce that. And it seems to be related to the polyphenols, not the specific vitamins that are in the juice itself. And so there are a lot of things like this in the book, and I recommend people to check it out and then make up, based on the recommendations of the book, things that will work best in their life.
Awesome. Tons of great information. Grab a handful of walnuts, grab your pomegranate juice, and go to timjenningsmd.com to find out more and get your copy of his new book, The Aging Brain. Thanks for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on The Tim Jennings Show.